Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Lashara Fullwood, and I work for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library, and I am part of the Library Code Lab team as part of the library. I have my wonderful partner here today, that would be Kurt Brown, and we are fortunate to have our great people from Queen City Bites, and that would be Miss Dania and Alyssa, and they have joined us today so that we can all learn together JavaScript. Thank goodness. So we're thrilled to have you. We do have a few housekeeping things, as we call them. We will be recording this program as a teaching tool for the library, as well as just fun stuff that we can learn better from with our partnership with Queen City Bites. Also, we will make sure to have the transcript running. You should have the option to CC so that you can see the transcript. And hopefully that is a tool that will work for you if you have trouble visually or anything like that. And thank you again for coming this early. And also, we are part of the digital inclusion team for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. So please have fun, ask questions. We'll be monitoring the chat, and make sure you're really kind to my Dania and my Alyssa. So let's do this, everybody.
I think you have to give me permission to record. It says, please ask the host to give you permission.
Yes, ma'am. You're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So following up with the housekeeping items, I will ask if you kindly could turn your microphone on mute, just so that we don't get any interference or feedback while we're speaking or recording. And then if you do have any questions, you can put them in the chat. There's also an option within Zoom to raise your hand. If you don't want to type it out, you can raise your hand and we will take a break and answer questions whenever we can. That being said, thank you, library. Thank you, Kurt and La. We're super excited to be here. Again, thanks for coming out on Saturday morning of all things to learn JavaScript. May not be everyone's weekend morning cup of tea, but we're going to try and make it fun and informative. And I'm Dania, and I I'm very fortunate to be here with Alyssa. I am one of the organizers of QC Bites. If you aren't a member of our meetup group and you're just here through the library, please do check us out. If you are just here through QC Bites and aren't familiar with the library, they have lots of awesome programs. So please do check them out as well. Support our local libraries. We're so grateful for this partnership and grateful that libraries exist at all. They're a blessed resource. So we're trying to give back and contribute to that. I am a developer and designer. I do UX and UI design and front-end development at Insight. And as you can see on this little slide here, I have some pets and those are their pictures. My puppy is snoring in the background. So if you hear any weird noises, I promise it's her. So that is it about me, and I will let Alyssa introduce herself.
All right. Hello, everyone. Oops. My name is Alyssa Lemon. I am a full stack web developer at Ray Ward, an advertising agency here in Charlotte. Also a co-organizer with Queen City Bites. I also have 2 pets, as you can see there, Twist and Secret, my 2 dogs. And there are some links for some stuff that I've worked on, some projects that I've worked on. I love HTML, SAS, JavaScript, accessibility, and tech ethics. And I am happy to be here today to help you all learn JavaScript.
Yay. So this is a rough agenda. Some of this stuff, might take a little more time, less time, depending on questions and what we run into. But basically the first hour is going to be us going through a pretty broad, high-level overview of JavaScript. We'll take a short break, and then we will dive into some gentle coding. So don't be intimidated by that. If you have a lot of experience with programming, that's awesome. If you don't have any, that's totally fine. We're going to keep it pretty easy. There's a lot that could be covered. and it's a brief class and we don't want to fry anyone's brains. So we're gonna, try and make it beginner friendly and give you resources to dig into more of it on your own if you like it, which hopefully you do. So that's the plan.
We just want to remind everyone that learning development skills is always an ongoing process, no matter what level you're at, be it junior or senior, or even just exploring. So especially for today's class, don't worry about memorizing anything that you're seeing. There are always tools to help when you need. We will be providing this slide deck to you all after the class. So you will have all of the resources and information. So if it's more comfortable for you to just observe the class, we welcome you to just follow along and watch and listen. If you're more comfortable with the live coding, feel free to code along with us. But either way, just go along with what you're comfortable with. All of this will be available to you after the class.
Okay, so you may or may not be familiar with JavaScript. It is the programming language that is used on websites. So you've definitely encountered it if you've been on the internet, and I'm assuming that since you're here, you have been on the internet. It's used for tons of stuff. It can be used for little things. It can be used for entire web pages. It's really been around a long time and has grown significantly. And because it's been around for such a long time, you see it used for everything from content updates, like, let's say images that are changing on a website, interactive maps, animated graphics. When you click on a button and something happens, a pop-up like this confirmation that there's an image of here. That's all written with JavaScript. And it really allows you to implement complex features on web pages anytime that a website does more than just sit there and display static information. If it's doing anything that you're interacting with, it's pretty much going to be JavaScript. It is the third layer of what we'll call the cake of standard web tech. So there's HTML, which has your content in it. There's the CSS, which does the styling. So if you've attended the last two parts of this development series, you've worked on those. If you haven't, no worries. And then there's JavaScript, which sort of brings it all together and makes it a little bit more fun.
So as Dania was saying, there are many different things that you can use JavaScript for. It can be used for simple things like alert boxes. It can also be used for dynamic data visualization. It can change the HTML content and styles. It can store values inside of variables that we will use later on in the class. It can run code in response to events that occur on a web page, and it builds entire websites, applications, and so much more.
So to simplify things, when you, as the slide says, when you load a web page, you're running all of the code that has been written for the web page. So that's, like I said, the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. It runs inside of an execution environment. You don't really need to worry about that. I don't really worry about that. It's just magic that happens, and I don't question it. It's more in Alyssa's wheelhouse than mine, probably. So when you have a browser tab open, it's taking in those raw materials, those files, and outputting the combination of them into what you're seeing. And this is what we, typically refer to as the user interface, what the user is seeing, what they're able to interact with and visualize within the browser.
So when you're starting out with JavaScript, you need to have it linked up with your HTML and CSS files. And there are two ways that you can do that. When you're starting a project, you can include the script tags and the actual JavaScript code directly into your HTML file. As you can see here in this image, there are 2 script tags, and then you'll see some JavaScript written inside of there. So that's going to be included in the HTML document itself. And then the other way, which I believe is probably more common, is to include a link to a JavaScript actual JavaScript file that's separate from your HTML file, but it's linked through this script tag here. So it just goes into your separate file to keep them separate, and you can write your JavaScript all in one place and then link it into your HTML.
Excuse me. So within JavaScript, there are some keywords. And basically, it's not really something you need to worry about majorly, but there are certain words when you're naming things that already exist within JavaScript, and you can't use those words as names for things that you're creating as well. So within JavaScript, there are things like functions, arguments, const, as you see there. So you can't name a function, basically. Like I said, nothing majorly you need to worry about, but we wanted to at least touch on it so that it's something you're aware of and it can exist in the back of your mind. There's a link to the full list of keywords if you ever are curious about learning more about words you can and can't use for things. Check that out.
So one of the very basic concepts in JavaScript is the idea of variables. This will show up in many different programming languages, but basically variables are containers for storing data values. You're going to use a lot of variables in your JavaScript travels, but basically you're defining values in a container that's named. So they can be numbers, they can be what's called a string, which is basically just a text within quotation marks. So it takes it explicitly as whatever is in the quotation marks right there. It says, my name is Dania. It can be an object, which is a larger piece of data that can include key value pairs, which you can see here. There are many different things inside of those brackets. So this person object has a name, an age, and a hobby. So it's all of that information is contained into one variable called person. There are also arrays, which are just sort of lists of things. So the variable fruits is cantaloupe, watermelon, strawberries. Arrays can be as long or as short as you like. You will also see variables defined as let or const. So instead of var there, which stands for variable, you could use let or const depending on what you want that variable to be able to do. We're not covering this right now, but there are some resources at the end of the slides that can help you better understand. But just shortly, that var or variable and let means that the variable can be changed, the value can be changed. And const, which means constant, means that that variable will never be able to change its value.
Good explanation of those. Thank you. So touching on the keywords point that I made a few slides ago, you do have to name things. So when you're creating JavaScript and you're using these variables, you are sort of, there's a possibility that you would be walking into JavaScript that's already created and working on stuff that already exists, and you can sort of follow the naming convention that's already been used. But if you're working on your own projects, let's say you want to build yourself a portfolio site like the one that we're working on here, and you want to add some JavaScript, you're sort of on your own, and it's up to you to name things. You can call them whatever you want. And that's kind of fun in theory, but in reality, I find it to be stressful. I'm like, especially if I'm working on something that other people are working on, if it's a project at work, I never know the right things to name things. Like, you want to pick something that makes sense. You want to pick something that you can look at what you're calling something and figure out what it does. So as we have listed here, the variable declaration, username. Okay, well, that's pretty self-explanatory, username. But sometimes when you're looking at tutorials online, you'll see something that, is just like the variable name is, I don't even know. I can't even think of an example.
Array.
But yes, array. Yes, you see that all the time. Let array equal and then the array. Well, that doesn't actually tell you what's supposed to be in that array. And as you'll discover, if you do decide to dig a little further into JavaScript, it is helpful to sort of give yourself those clues to be able to untangle some of these things, because it can get a little confusing when you write something and you want to come back and figure out what you did or what someone else did, or someone else is trying to figure out what you did. So long story short, try to keep your names something that makes sense. And username, okay, so you have a declaration where you basically define what your variable is going to be. So username is Bob, and Bob is a string because it's in quotation marks. So it will be, if you call that variable, you're calling whatever is in that string. So Bob. So once you've defined it, you can then call it to retrieve whatever's being stored in the variable. So you've defined it, and then you just say username. And it's basically the same as calling what you have defined as username. And you will use this very frequently. So it might not really make sense until we dig into some of the coding and you can see it in action, but try to keep it sort of simple and give you an example of how it's going to be relevant to what you're doing.
Daniel, if you want to take this one, I can show them the console log.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So console log is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. So Alyssa's going to give us a demo of the console. And basically, you can output a message or data to the console, and there are going to be all kinds of reasons that you need to do this, but it's a useful way to test lots of different things. Like, you can check to make sure your files are connected correctly, because sometimes you're going to have a lot of JavaScript files that do different things depending on what you're working on. Sometimes you're only going to have one, but you're still going to want to make sure that it is actually connected to your HTML file. It can be frustrating to be in a website that you're working on and you're clicking a button and nothing's happening, and you can't really figure out, is my JavaScript wrong? And in reality, it's just not connected correctly. It's not input correctly. So you have to, as a practice, like to just make sure by testing it with a console message that it's connected correctly. And then sometimes you're doing more complicated things and you're trying to retrieve a variable that's an object and has information in it. And you want to see what that information is. So you can call the variable name and you can see what's being stored in there, and that will be output to your web console. Again, that's a little bit more complicated than we're going to get into today, but just something to sort of keep in the back of your mind. And it's also a very good debugging tool if you're having issues with your code and it won't work. So as you can see, Alyssa has the console open here. It is a tool that's within every web browser. So whatever browser you use, you can easily get to it. There's a variety of ways depending on what the browser is. There's keyboard shortcuts, but it's very easy to just right click. You can always right click and pick the inspect option that's in that menu that pops up, and that pulls up the web inspector, which will show you all of your HTML And then there's little tabs at the top, and there's always one that says console. And that's where you're going to be able to leave console messages. So you can put a console log in your code. And then when you run your code, the message will show up in here, or you can directly type it in the console, just like that. It's a pretty handy tool. You'll need to use it frequently. It's one of those things that's like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with it, only because it's just, I don't even know how to describe it, but sometimes I just feel overwhelmed by not knowing what to debug and what to use in my console log in order to get the information back that I want. But it is a very handy tool, and you will definitely use it if you write any JavaScript. So check out more information about that for sure once you get into it.
Yeah, very, very useful. Oops. Okay. So next we'll go over quickly just operators. A lot of these will look familiar to you as you get into it. When you're writing JavaScript functions, you're going to want them to do something. The purpose of JavaScript is to make things interactive and change. And so a lot of times you're going to want to use some mathematics or some conditional statements. So, if this situation is occurring on the site, then do this. So you'll see familiar ones, addition, subtraction, and mathematical ones, and then some that are sort of more specific to JavaScript and other programming languages. The equality and inequality, so it's equals and not equals. And then identity and non-identity is for, so in JavaScript, and this might be going too deep into the weeds, but things can be sort of equal or exactly equal. So that double equal sign is the sort of equal. And then triple has to be an exact match. And I will put some examples of this at the end of the slides before we send them out, just so that makes a little more sense to you all. And then there's the and symbols, which is just to combine. The or symbol, which is to specify if one of multiple situations is true or not. And then just not, which is the bang symbol or exclamation point.
Okay, so this is where we really start getting into the meat of JavaScript. If you want interaction to happen, you are going to have to define what that interaction is going to be and what's going to happen. And you need to write functions in order to do that. This is an example of a function. It's a diagram of the different parts. So it might look like gibberish if you aren't familiar with programming at all, and that is totally fine. You don't need to memorize what these different parts are called. This is just a reference slide. So the function orange keyword here, it tells JavaScript, hey, this is a function. So you're going to need to store this action, and we're going to use it for something later. And then you after you write the word function, you give it a name. So when I was talking earlier about naming and how you will see generic names and referring to variables, well, you'll also see them for functions. So sometimes you will see a function called my function, and you're like, okay, well, that's not very descriptive. What the heck does that do? So regardless, this is where you put your name. You can name it whatever you want. You are leaving yourself a note to say, hey, this function is going to do this thing. JavaScript doesn't care what you name it. So don't worry about naming it something right or wrong, aside from that list of keywords that are special and reserved that you can't use. And then in green here, you see the parameters. And those, you don't have to have them, but in certain situations, you might need them. So in this example, you can see in purple, the function body, and that's where you're going to define what the function does. And in this example, we need parameters to pass into the function so that it will do something with those things. And in the next slide or two, we will cover what exactly this function does. But just for now, know that those are the different parts. The function can be a lot bigger, a lot more complex than this, but it can also be just this simple. So those are what they're called. Those are the type of things that they do. Like I said, this is just a reference slide for the future when you're like, I don't understand what a function is. How does this work? Just something to come back to.
So as Dania covered a little bit before, JavaScript doesn't care what you name your functions. That previous function, my function, if you just looked at that on its own, it doesn't really give you any clues as to what that function does. It just indicates that it is a function. So there are good ways to name things and somewhat bad ways to name things, depending on how you want your code to be readable. And readability is definitely always a goal, because most of the time, I would imagine, people are not only working on their own code all the time. You have other people collaborating with you. You'll be working on a team probably, and you want other people to be able to read your code. So what would be a better name for this function? Can anybody type it out in the chat? What you think would be a better name for the function on the previous slide? This one right here. No takers?
One thing to keep in mind too, when answer, if anyone wants to take a stab at it, again, there's no wrong answers, is if you go, will you go back to that anatomy of a function slide? Remember that the asterisk is the multiplication operator in JavaScript. So like I said, we'll cover what this function does in a minute, but P1 times P2 is what we're asking JavaScript to do there. That's it. You don't have to put an answer in if you don't want, but in case anyone didn't understand what that was doing, that might help you come up with a better name.
Yeah. There you go. Multiply fun.
Multiplication is fun. Good answer.
Yep, love it. All right.
So this is sort of redundant at this point, because we just covered that, but it is, yes, it is written to perform multiplication. So sure, multiplication, multiply, fun, multiplication, fun, multiply is fine. I put in multiply things, whatever. You're basically taking the parameters here and you're returning. So you're asking JavaScript to give you back the value of what, let's just say, let's take it back to like, I don't know, I was going to say 7th grade math, but it's 2021 now. This is probably taught in 1st grade. Mm-hmm. So let's take it back to like A times B. So in this situation where you're defining a function, you're giving it P1 and P2 as, it could say A and B, it doesn't matter. You're not giving it numbers at this point. Those are placeholders. And you're just saying, I want JavaScript, I want you to multiply this number and this number. I'm not going to give them to you yet, but when I do, this is what I want you to do with them. I want you to multiply them and give me an answer of what those two things equal. And this is considered a function declaration. So just like a variable, you're defining what you want the function to do. You're not running it. You're not giving it numbers. You're just saying, when I say multiply things, then I want you to do this thing that I told you it was going to do. That's it.
So that's great. We've written a function and it exists. But like Dania said, it's not actually running. So an important thing to remember is that when you've written a function, if you actually want to use that function, you have to call it in order for it to be executed. So this is where you would actually pass values into the function to have it do what you want it to do with those values. The parenthesis operator invokes the function, and you can see below where we are calling this calling multiply things function on these two particular numbers. So we don't need all of the rest of that code that was in the function to have this done. It will just multiply things, whatever two numbers we give it. And the expected result would be 48 in this case.
So that's functions. And like I said, that's a significant amount of what you would be doing in JavaScript. They vary in complexity. Another very important thing that you will use frequently are event listeners. And they tell JavaScript to listen for a specific event. There's in the little graphic, there's examples of events there. A button has been clicked, a file finished loading, someone pressed a key, an animation has started. And JavaScript is that little person right there listening to when those events happen. And, you know, if you want a dialog box to pop up when a button is clicked, you have to tell JavaScript, I want you to listen for the click of this button. And when that happens, we're going to run this function. And it'll be a function that we've defined separately, or that you just plug in to the event listener. We don't need to get into that right now, but there's an example of it below. And this is, again, a pretty key concept. A significant amount of JavaScript is the interactivity that's going to be happening when a user is on a page. And a lot of that is when another event happens or when they interact with the page itself, and then you want something to happen. So this is a good reference. There's all kinds of information about different event listeners and what you can, I mean, there are all kinds of event listeners, tons I have never even used, but they're pretty handy. You can do things like when a keyboard key comes back up, and you can do it when the keyboard key goes down. You know, it's very specific, very handy, lots of things in there that you can play with and that are pretty fun, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I love that graphic. That's a great graphic. JavaScript, like a lot of other programming languages, is case sensitive. So using case in certain ways is very important. The most basic form of case that we use with JavaScript is called Camel Case. And that's another great graphic there that kind of shows what that means. It's writing phrases without spaces or punctuation, and you're separating the words with a uppercase letter. And you've probably seen this in your daily travels, examples, iPhone, eBay, those types of things. So it's just used when naming your variables or naming your functions. You just want to remember that it's lowercase to start, and then every word after that is in uppercase.
It definitely does make things more readable too. Like, just imagine if you had a function called like multiply usernames and add them together. Not that you would ever have a function called that, but who am I to judge what you're doing with your JavaScript? If that's all written in lowercase, you can't have spaced out words. So if it's all written in lowercase, that's going to be illegible. So I just want to chime in and say, you know, if you think about, like, it might look a little weird, but it's very handy when you're trying to write out names that have more than one word in them.
Yeah, and Dani, I just wanted to let you know that in the chat, Ismail put nice picture of camel in Camel Case. Nice.
Perfect.
Love it.
Okay, so this comments in JavaScript, it might seem a little far out there right now conceptually. You might not really understand why you would need to write comments in your code, but there are different options for doing so. And to forward slashes, you can have one line comment. And then a block comment has the forward slash and the asterisk at the beginning, and then an asterisk and a forward slash at the end. That tells JavaScript, do not execute these lines. Do not do what is on this line. And that's really handy for multiple reasons. Some scenarios are, if you're writing something, when I first started writing JavaScript, I had no idea what anything was doing. I was just sort of like throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. And if I started piecing things together, and then I would come back and say, okay, well, I got it working, but I'm not really sure how, and I'm not really sure why this is working. It is really handy as you're going, or as you figure it out, if you don't know why, as you're going, to leave yourself comments and say, okay, this function takes this thing from up here and it does this with it. And that's a good note to yourself, but it can also be a really good note to someone else. So if Alyssa and I are working on a project together and I'm writing part of the JavaScript and she's writing part of the JavaScript, I might go in and be like, well, what the heck was she, why did she do this way? It's really nice to have a comment that says, I did this way because of whatever, something I'm not thinking about, something I don't know about. And if someone is going to come in down the road and work on what we've been working on, and they're going to jump into our JavaScript files, this happens all the time. I am working on projects all the time that people have written months or years ago. And I might be looking at something and I'm like, I can't even figure out what this is doing. And I've got to spend a large portion of time trying to just, piece it together, pull it apart, like pull on a thread and see where this goes. And that's always going to be part of it. You're always going to have to do some figuring out of what's going on when someone else has written something. But if there's little codes here and there that sort of give hints or explain things, incredibly helpful. And then another use case for comments is you can comment out things that are in your code. So if I'm working on something and it's not doing what I want it to do, I might put a comment around it and say, okay, JavaScript, ignore this function, and then what happens? Or if I'm working on improving something and I'm trying to add in new functionality, I might comment out the old function that was running while I add in my new one so that things aren't conflicting with one another. Super handy, very useful tool, seems very simple, but I use comments literally every day. And they're just really something that I highly recommend getting comfortable using.
Yes. And another note, an additional use for comments that I use on an almost daily basis is when I'm writing JavaScript, I might write, my function. And then for the part that I want it to execute, I'll write out sort of line by line in comments what I want it to be doing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I guess, what, if you've heard the word pseudocode, it basically is you're writing out in words what you want your code to be doing. And then you can kind of think about what the JavaScript needs to be piece by piece. But it's just a good way to add like an organizational structure to your functions, especially if they get pretty complex.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even if they're not getting complex, sometimes it's hard to sort of come up with a map of what you want your JavaScript to, how you want it to work, or how to write it out, especially when you're beginning. Like I said, there are still plenty of times where I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So I have to write exactly like Alyssa's saying, write out line by line. Well, first I want it to take this thing And then I want to check to see if this thing equals that thing or is greater than that thing. And then I want to return this thing. And just even breaking it out into those little steps really can help you figure out how to implement the actual code that's going to do those things.
Absolutely. And then we've got just some tips. Semicolons are used at the end of your statements. Technically, it's only required when you need to separate statements on a single line. Some people, like myself, believe that it's good or best practice to have them at the end of each statement. It helps the code to be more readable. You know, at the end of the day, you want everybody to be able to understand what you're doing and why. And sometimes the semicolons can indicate to people that you're done with, you know, like a period at the end of a sentence. It is case sensitive, like we mentioned before. And I guess just another tip is consistency. If you are sort of choosing names that that aren't really expressive of what you're doing, and then later on in the code, the same file, you decide to start doing that, it's probably good to go back in your code and do what's called refactoring to sort of make your code more readable, more understandable for everybody else that's going back through it. So, you know, just like we don't like picking up after messy roommates, you know, our coworkers and colleagues don't like going through messy code. So as much as possible, try to be consistent when you're coding.
Yes. And on that note too, one thing I forgot to include in that slide was, in general, in addition to being consistent, try to be neat in general when coding, period, not just specific to JavaScript. JavaScript is going to run whether you format it properly or you don't. But as a favor to your future self and anyone else who might come along, just take the time. You can look up formatting. It's once you get used to it, it's really not that bad. But the indentation pattern that you follow is really, it can be maddening to go back through very messy code. If I encounter code that's not formatted properly, I set aside the time and fix it, whether I did it or not, because I know that I'm not going to be able to figure out what's going on if it's jumbled and all over the place, and some lines, everything's on one line, and some things, everything's broken out properly. I can't, like, perhaps it's a personal flaw of mine. I also can't walk past a pile of clutter in my living room without picking it up and putting it away. It will just cause me anxiety. So just as a favor to yourself, so that you can make sense of what you've done in the future, and anyone else can too, try to start following the pattern of not only being consistent, but being neat and orderly.
And
That's a life tip, not
And
just a JavaScript tip.
Dania, I don't think anybody would consider being tidy a flaw. So
It's my inner Monica Geller coming out.
yeah. So I just thought it would be a good idea before we start the live coding session to leave it open for anybody for questions. If you have any questions before we start, feel free to put them in the chat.
Everyone doing okay? So far, so good? Thumbs up if you are.
Is everyone awake? Is everyone still
Maybe that's the better
awake?
question.
If people are sleeping, I might take that personally.
I have a question.
It's good.
My name is Justin. I'm a college student. I go to Coastal Carolina right now. It's my last year there, and I'm doing information systems. I was wanting to know, since you guys are already doing what I want to do, what IDEs do you guys use to code in?
That's a good question.
I personally use Visual Studio Code. I like the extensions that it offers. I like the way that it color codes things to make things even more readable. I know that there are plenty of other ones that people favor. I think that I use VS Code because I started using VS Code and just never really delved into anything else. But there are a number of different ones that are available. Atom is one. We can put a list at the end of the slides if people are interested in that.
I
Thank you.
also
Thank you.
use VS Code, but I haven't always. So I have gone through, I started out using Sublime Text and then moved on to VS Code. And then I started using WebStorm, which is a JetBrains product. They have other IDs, but WebStorm is specific to front end work. And I actually really liked WebStorm. It is a paid, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, we're just talking about the program that you're using to code in.
Right.
So it is a paid option, and it's nice. It is really nice. It's pretty and it's elegant, and it has a lot of nice extensions. But honestly, I couldn't really think of a justification for keeping it over VS Code. I used it for a while. It worked really well. But VS Code has everything that I need, and it's free. And I like free. So I went back to VS Code. That's what I use now.
Thanks so much for the answers. Yeah, I just started VS Code this quarter. I used Eclipse before, and it was kind of cumbersome. And then I did the old school Notepad++, and then ran it in console for a while.
Oh,
Wow.
I'm vanilla on most of my languages.
How are you liking VS Code? Do you like it?
It's so easy. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm doing C# right now and then PHP. So we're
Nice.
learning
Okay.
back end.
very cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's probably above this class. But I was just I
That's
saw
no.
I saw it on Meetup. I was like, oh cool, I need to get a refresher. So I'm kicking into your class.
No, it's not above the class. It's great. It's it's a beginner class, and everyone is welcome, and a refresher is always good, especially if you're not working in it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions? There's a question about global scope. Yeah, okay, Alyssa. Yeah, we're not really going to cover scope just because it's a little, it's not even advanced, honestly. It's a little more complicated than we have time to go into. But, there are resources at the end of the slides that will have lots of information. There's the good thing about JavaScript, since it's been around for so long and is so diverse, there is so much info. Like you can look online and find 100 answers to any questions that you have. And a good and a bad thing is that because of the way JavaScript is written, there are different ways to do pretty much everything. So when you do need to find information, there's going to be all different types of answers. And there are going to be people who do things in a very complicated way and people who simplify things and everything in between. So tons of info out there, tons of resources. But as far as scope goes, basically, it's just a reference to, and we'll maybe touch on this during the coding portion, just a reference to how and where different things in JavaScript are available to be reused. So some things are available globally, as in on the whole page, or some things will be available locally. So just within like a specific function, let's say. So yeah, it's a little bit more than we have time to get into, but definitely a good topic that we'll touch on if we have time.
Did you all see that Ted had a question about any good resource sites for practicing Axios requests? Ooh. Maybe not.
I don't personally, but I can ask around if that's an important thing I can include in the slides, or you can reach out to us separately. I'm sure we know people who have good resources if we don't ourselves. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't off the top of my head. I know that the last project I was on, they were using Axios, and I didn't really dig into that too deeply. So, but I can ask what some good resources would be from the people who are still on that project for sure. Let's see. Yes, we'll talk about this at the end really quick too, but Charlotte Devs is a good local community. We have a Slack that you can join if you're not on Slack already. It's basically like a chat situation, sort of like Discord, if you are familiar with that, and or Microsoft Teams or something like that. It's better than both of those, in my personal opinion, but there's a local developer community that has Charlotte Devs and is a really wonderful, supportive, welcoming space where you can ask all kinds of questions, or you can just be there to network and meet people and participate in fun chats about things that you're learning or things you want to learn or music. I mean, it doesn't have to be development related at all. It can just be a good way to meet people in the space, and jobs get posted there. Information about meetups get posted there. It's a good place to be if you want to be a part of this community. Just scrolling back up real quick to Landon's question about how far we'll go today. We're definitely not going to get into destructuring objects. That is well beyond a basics class. I 100% appreciate your frustration.
Yeah.
It JavaScript. So I'm wearing this t-shirt that you probably can't see, but it is my spirit animal when I'm working on tough stuff. It says JavaScript says your tears are delicious. And I bought this a couple years ago and thought it was just the funniest thing ever, because I would get to stuff like that and be so frustrated. And I would just be like, this isn't for me. I can't do this. I'm not capable of figuring this stuff out. And now I look back and I'm like, oh geez, it's some of it's just hard. Some of it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not the way my brain works. But as we were saying, there's all kinds of resources and people to ask for help. And there's ways to work through problems, even if you don't fully understand them. I still don't really understand a lot of the stuff that I have to do, but I take it piece by piece and get through it in a way that I can figure it out. And it's totally doable. As far as destructuring objects, I'm sure that either Alyssa or I would be glad to help you. Our contact info is at the end. You can reach out to either of us and we can try and help you figure out some of the sticking points. But keep at it. Don't give up. I'm glad you're here. You're going to do great. Objects, you can do them. It's
Yeah.
good.
There have been a lot of times that I've wanted to give up, but if you push through, it is very satisfying.
It is. So, do we want to do just like a couple minute break real quick before we jump into coding? Does anyone need a break, or are we cool? I don't know what.
I'm fine.
All right. Well, if anyone needs to, take a 2-minute walk away, that's fine. We'll keep going, but we're going to go slow, and it's not going to be super quick moving because we want to really make sure that everyone gets it. So yeah, let's jump into coding. Let's do the fun stuff. So I'm going to talk us through a couple of really easy, one or two fairly easy, I shouldn't say really easy, fairly simple things in JavaScript. And if you haven't taken the first two classes, there is a space on Glitch. And if you don't have an account there, go ahead and take a minute now and go to glitch.com and create an account. And then you can follow this link here. And we will start working from that. If you have any trouble creating your account, let us know. And if we can get like a hand raise or chat comment if you run into anything. Otherwise, we'll start actually working on the coding in like a minute. But take your time. So I'm just going to talk while people are creating their accounts. Glitch is actually like, so you may have seen or used it before. You may have seen or used CodePen. There's different online editors that you can use rather than downloading a piece of software like we were talking about an IDE. If you want to just play around with something in the browser, you have these tools like Glitch and CodePen, where you can create an account, you can save projects there. It's really handy for stuff like this because we can easily create a base project and share it out with anyone who wants to join in. That being said, once you do get this project from last time open, don't change any of the code yet because it is a shared resource. And if you change something that's in that link, it will change the entire thing for everyone. So as you can see, the important steps before you do any coding, what you do within Glitch to make that work is click the remix button. And there's instructions for how to do that. And that is how you get your own copy, basically. So, okay, so there's comments that you can't figure out how to join the link. Yeah, there's code if you can type it into your browser, you should be able to access the code that already exists, which I can put in the chat. Thank you. I don't know why I didn't think to do that before. Just haven't had enough coffee this morning.
Right.
Or maybe too much. I don't know. So does that work for those of you who are having trouble? I'm going to assume silence is a yes. Okay, good. Yes, good, good. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you go into the upper left-hand corner of the Glitch page, you can choose the remix option. And like I said, that basically creates a copy for you and it will change the name. And you'll see that it goes from what I had called it to some random language chip frame, apparently.
That was my
Glitch
remix. Yeah.
yeah, a Glitch comes up with awesome names. So once you have that, then you're welcome to change your code, and do whatever you want, and it will change it. So this portfolio page that you see on the right-hand side is what was built in the HTML and CSS class, and that's what we're going to keep working on today. So what we're going to do is actually open this in a new window. So if you go up to the show up in the corner there, you can pick in a new window. And that way we can use the web inspector, web console tools. Within the Glitch page, it becomes a little bit much to manage several windows, and we don't really need to be in there right now. So this just opens your page in a new window. So when we go back to Glitch itself, if you see your files on the left-hand side, there's going to be index.html. And you can, if you don't want to look at your portfolio page within this window, you can click the little arrow right above it beside change URL, and that should collapse it, I believe. I think. Yeah. And that way we can just look at it in the second window. You can leave it open if you want, but if you don't want competing things to look at, you can close it. So, okay, so we're in the index.html file. If you weren't in the beginning 2 sections of this class, that basically is our homepage. That's the page you're looking at. That's the markup for the portfolio information, for all of the text that you see. And then there's another file, style.css, and that is the styles that have been included in the CSS file, in the CSS class that Alyssa taught. And you're styling everything that's in this page there. So we're going to keep our JavaScript pretty simple today. So we're just going to write it within our HTML file, as we discussed at the beginning of our presentation. If your JavaScript is a little more lengthy or complex, you can do a separate file for your JavaScript code and then include it in here. But since it's a beginner class and we're not going to go into anything too complicated, we're just going to keep it right in here. Plus, it's easy if you don't have to jump back and forth between files to get names of things and stuff like that. It's all here for you. So what we do to include it in our HTML file is you scroll down to nearly the bottom, and you're going to see what is your closing body tag. And oh, you can delete my commented out code there, Alyssa. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave that in there. Perfect. So above the body tag, and anyone else, sorry, if I assume that's in everyone's, I meant to delete it and I forgot. You can just do what Alyssa did, delete it all. We're going to write something slightly different than that anyways. So right above the closing body tag, which is basically right before the end of your index document, you include your script tag here. So you do the lesser than sign and then the word script and then a greater than sign. And that opens a script tag, and it will automatically include a closing tag for you because that is required. You need to put your code in between those 2 tags. And if you don't have the closing tag, it's going to end up all kinds of broken. So when you're using development tools and things like Glitch, it will automatically generate the closing tag for you as a wonderful feature so that we don't break everything when we're writing our code. So like I said, within this code, within this tag, we're gonna write our code. But first, like I mentioned before with the console log, it's helpful to make sure that it's wired up correctly. So if you go ahead and type out console, the word console, period, log, and then in parentheses, put a message in quotation marks, something like, this is working, or whatever your name, it doesn't matter. And then after your parenthesis, put a semicolon to close it, to end it. That's your period at the end of your sentence. Glitch will save automatically. You don't need to hit the save button. And then if you go over to your browser window, your tab that has your portfolio project open in it by itself.
Sorry, that deleted for some reason. Okay.
It's okay. Okay, so now this should have the code that we just saved because like I said, or that just saved automatically. So if you use the console, which we can get to by right clicking and then hit inspect and then go up to the tab that says console, you should see your message there. If you don't see your console message that you typed in, raise a hand. Is there anyone who hasn't gotten this far? Do we need to slow down? I'm going to assume.
It won't let me edit, delete the script there that you wanted us to delete.
Did you remix the project first?
What's that?
Did you go in here and remix the project before you started editing?
That's why, because it's read me only. So
Yeah, so
let me do
go
that.
in.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. It looks like Zelda's having some issues too.
Oh yeah, I'm lost. Okay, where can you come off mute for a second and tell us where you are, what you're stuck on?
Hi there, good morning.
Good morning.
It's my first time and I'm completely lost.
That's okay.
I have no idea. I'm on the glitch page, but I don't know how to expand the whole, how about project contacts. Like I have no idea where this typing, the script place, like where you have your, right, all that. I don't have that page.
Okay.
So did
you go ahead.
Go ahead, Mindy.
I was just going to say, were you able to get to the project? Did you follow the link we posted in the chat to get to the project?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay.
And then I opened it, and on the left there's that readme.md accessibility CS notes, and then on the right is the green projects, like my portfolio header thing, article heading. But and then in the middle I have welcome to glitch, but I don't have any of the other stuff on the left that you have there.
Okay.
I don't know how to get to.
So did you remix the project also? Did you go in and do the remix part right here that you see this right here pointing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so you can do that by, if you go to the top left-hand corner here where the name is, there's a little drop down. So if you hit that and go to this remix button, that will make a new version of the project for you to edit. Hopefully that should help.
Okay, it's saying, let's see. Saying we cannot seem to connect to your project at the moment. West, I clicked glitch, remix, and then loading project, we cannot seem to connect to the apologies. Please try refreshing your browser.
Okay. So maybe try to.
Okay.
I haven't seen that one before.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
You've given us a challenge.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, you didn't do anything wrong. Don't be sorry.
I have the same problem. My project is still loading.
Okay.
Huh. Okay.
Time for Google.
When in doubt.
I'm sorry, maybe if we share the screen, it would be easier to check what's happening. Maybe, but if we are willing to do that.
Yeah, how do I share the screen? Because I have no idea.
I'm not honestly sure if you are able to share your screen with the way that the Zoom call is set up.
Yeah, you disabled the screen sharing. Sorry, the host has disabled. I was trying to share. Sorry.
Can you maybe try closing your browser entirely and then opening it back up and trying again?
Okay, let me do so.
Okay.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta find that link again in the chat.
Oh, yeah. I can put it in. Hold on.
I got it.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh goodness. Safari can't find the server.
Oh.
Ooh.
Do you have do you have another browser you can try?
Let's see.
Firefox.
I guess Google Chrome.
Yeah, that should work.
Okay. Let's see. I'm very sorry. I am delaying
be.
everybody now.
Nope. This is literally
Part of the process.
a part of what working on anything like this is. There's always going to be some ramp up and some technical complications that get in the way, and it takes a while to get things running smoothly. And
Oh, yes.
then there's interruptions, and it happens all the time. Truly, don't worry about it.
All
Thank
day, every day.
Thank you.
I feel like this profession requires a lot of patience.
Yes.
It sure does. There have been full days of my job where I'm like just asking someone to help me navigate different difficulties that come up with different things that I'm trying to install and get running.
Okay.
And I'm like, there was a whole day gone.
Yep.
All right. So I'm back in. I used Google
Okay.
this time.
Great.
And then, so back on the left corner where it says J-S start.
Yes.
I dropped that, the drop,
Mhm.
and then it has the remix project. You want me to
Yes.
click that?
Yes. Click that.
Okay. All right. Loading project. Let's see if this time it pops up. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm back to my portfolio. Welcome to Glitch. And then on the left, the assets, the readme.md and sorts.
Okay. So if you click on the index.html, does it open what you're seeing here on Alyssa's screen?
Yep. Yes. Now,
Yay.
yes. Thank you.
Success.
Success
Okay.
at last.
Okay.
Before we go on, though, is anybody else having issues?
Thank you very much.
My project is still loading, so I try to open it again,
Okay.
and I'm still not. So I close it. I use my Google Chrome from the beginning, but my project is just loading forever. So I close this and I try to open again.
Okay.
But now I lost the link. So where I can get the link?
Oh,
I'll post it again.
Yep,
Okay.
right in the chat.
There you go.
So where I can get it? I'm sorry, this is my first time.
No, it's okay. In the Zoom window where the Zoom call is running, there's a chat. There's a little chat icon at the bottom of the screen.
The bottom.
Mm-hmm. If you sort of hover
Yeah,
over the bottom of your screen, you should see chat.
Yeah.
If you click on that, you should see the link in there.
Got it. Okay, now my project is open. Good, thank you.
And then don't forget to do the remix if you haven't done that already.
Sure. So I go to on the left, later,
right here.
I don't see the remix now, but I see your remix, but I don't see mine.
Did you click on that name in the corner?
See right here where my pointer is?
I see it. Okay.
Yeah, and then you click on it, and then
click on that.
Yeah.
Okay, and click on remix project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's loading now. but at least it's working now. That's good. Okay.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Index.html.
Yep. And then go to index,
Got it.
and then if you delete the commented out script code that was at the bottom of the page that we did, delete that.
Yes.
And then if you want to type in this console log to make sure that it's working correctly, you can do that as your next step.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have the remix.
When you click up here?
Yes, when I click on the left.
Okay.
What do you have?
It says RUNE-GABBY-manicure, and then under that is share, and then under that is new file.
Oh, okay. So in the top right, like in the top corner here, you need to just click on that. Just click
Okay.
right here. See how there's like a little drop down arrow?
Okay, yes.
Click that. You
And-
should be able to see this menu here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's a new tool to learn for sure. We're happy to take time to help you figure that out. It's really not a big deal.
For sure.
Okay, anyone else, or are we good?
Yeah, we good. I'm good.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So now that we've got everyone on Glitch, we're gonna do something simple. If you look at the portfolio page that was designed, you can see the portfolio header up at the top of the page where it says My Portfolio Header. Now, if we go scroll up in our HTML document to the top and we look for where that exists, you can see it says header, H1 ID equals main header, My Portfolio Header. A nice thing about JavaScript is that it interacts really well with your HTML files. It can go in and find things in your HTML. You just have to identify them correctly. And sometimes you do things like add an ID, which is a way to identify one unique item in your HTML file. Sometimes you add an ID to something literally just so that you have a way to grab it from JavaScript. Sometimes you add a name, a class name, or an ID for styling purposes, but you also can do it just so that you have a way to grab it from JavaScript. So that's what we're going to do. So if you copy that main header name right there, just get that in your clipboard by highlighting it and then control copy or right click copy, whatever you like to do. And then we go back down to our script tag. We are going to create a variable for the header. And so you can do, I typically default to const. And like I said, we're not going to cover that in this class. You can do variable, VAR, const, CONST. It doesn't really matter in this case. So you're going to do const header or whatever name you want to name your variable. Like I said, I like to keep them something logical. And in this case, we're grabbing the header. So I would call it header and all lowercase, and then equals. So we're going to tell JavaScript how to get it. And the way you do that is, well, there are several ways, but the way we're going to do it right now is type out the word document. So you're telling JavaScript, I want you to go in this file that we're in the document, and I want you to get something. And here's how you're going to get it. So you type period, so document period. And then we're going to follow camel case on this, like we talked about. But the words are going to be get element by ID. And so capital E, capital B, capital I, get element by ID. So you're saying, hey, JavaScript, go through this file and find this item that has this ID on it. And like I said, an ID is a unique identifier. There's only one. There can only be one item that has a particular ID. And so JavaScript knows exactly what to go find. And then you're going to do open parentheses and paste what you copied and make sure that it is in quotation marks. So if you didn't copy the quotation marks, go ahead and add those. So it should be, the entire thing should be const header space equals space document dot get element by ID open parentheses quotation marks main dash header quotation marks close parentheses and then a semicolon to finish it off. And that is going to give us our variable that we've defined. And all you are going to do with that is tell JavaScript, when I use the word header, this is what I'm referring to. When I want to call the word header, I want you to navigate through this file and I want you to find this one thing that exists with this ID on it. And then we're going to take that element and we're going to do something with it. So we're going to add an event listener like we talked about. And the way that I like to do that is enter to a new line. And I usually put a blank line in between two different things just because it makes it more readable to me. You don't have to, you could go directly below the line where we defined our constant. And we are going to call the header. So just type out the word header. And then period. And we're going to tell JavaScript to add an event listener. So it's just header period, add event listener. And you're going to follow the same camel case that we talked about. And then we're going to open a parentheses and we're going to tell JavaScript what event we're listening for. So in this case, we're going to listen for a click. So you do quotation marks and the word click. And that way it knows exactly what to listen for. After the end quotation marks, you do a comma. And then we're going to write out a function to tell it what to do when that click happens. So in this case, we're going to type out the word event. And that means it's listening for a click event. And when that event happens, it's going to do the thing we're about to tell it to do. And the type of function we're going to write here, which we didn't really cover, is just a different way to write out a function. And there's lots more to learn about this that we can leave resources to. So basically, it's shorthand and makes it a little bit more readable. So you're going to do event space and then equals and a greater than sign. So you're going to make an arrow, and this is called an arrow function. And then space, and you're going to do open curly brace. And if you don't do a lot of coding, the curly brace is beside the P on your keyboard. And it's the top one, the curly one, not the bracket.
Sometimes we call them mustache brackets too.
Yes, I much prefer that naming. And then we're going to enter to a new line. So this gives us a place to write what we want our function to do. And we're going to do a simple pop-up box that is called an alert. So just type the word alert. And then we're going to say what we want the alert to say. So what do we want the user to see when this alert message pops up? And you, just like every other message we've done so far, open parentheses and quotation marks, and then type your message. Anything you want, clicked, hello, whatever makes your heart sing. I love JavaScript. I like tacos. Me too. And then after that close parentheses, we add a semicolon, and that is the end of our alert. Before we check to see if that worked, has anyone, I know that's a lot for me to just sort of read out and dictate what you should type in. It's not an ideal learning scenario, but it's the best way to sort of get something simple to happen for now. So if anyone has anything they're stuck on with that before we check it, let us know.
I just wanted to answer, Ishmael had another question about, he said, from your experience, have you ever seen any issues related with giving the same ID to different elements, and what is the best way to keep track of it? That would be that if you're writing good code, you're not gonna be putting IDs of the same ID on multiple elements.
Correct.
You're gonna want to use a class for something that has multiples.
Yeah.
IDs only go on one item only. And so yes, in answer to your question, I have seen where an ID has been used twice, and it does cause issues because of the way that it is supposed to function within the JavaScript environment.
Yeah.
So that's something that you're not ever going to want to do. If you do come across it, it's something you'll want to fix for sure, because it will mess up your code and it will break things.
Yes, it will. It's, you know, it's something you sort of tend to think of when you're writing your HTML. If you're the one writing the HTML. If not, you can go back in and edit it and change it so that an ID is unique. You really do, it is something you need to be careful of. It will break things and can be a frustrating. There are good debugging tools for JavaScript, but sometimes the error messages you get aren't the most clear and they're a little difficult to figure out what's going wrong. So if you can be aware of it ahead of time, get out ahead of it and make sure that you name things with an ID only once. And that can be, I mean, if you have something that's very similar, it can be just adding a number 2 to the end or whatever. I mean, it just make sure it's unique. And I don't think that it's something that you'll run into super frequently as long as you try to stay on top of it. Okay, so I'm just reading the chat and seeing if everyone's okay before we check this. Yes, okay, good. Alyssa, you answered about the curly brackets. Yeah, so curly brackets are gonna go after you define your function, or do you mean after the function symbol?
They're always used to house the function, like the actual.
Yeah, the block of what the function's going to be doing. Yeah. Okay. So
also, query selector is only for classes, right? Query selector is actually going to, doesn't that grab a tag? I think that grabs tags, right? Query selector P would grab all tags.
Yeah, you can. I don't honestly use JavaScript with classes that often. I'm trying to remember what the best way to grab them is.
You can do get element by class, but
yeah, you can.
That returns an array.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to like iterate over the array in order to use the different items in the class. If that makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense to me, but you know. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone has this little event listener in place. If you go to your window where you have your portfolio page taking up the whole window, if you didn't do that, just really quick, up at the top of this screen here where it says show, click on in a new window, and that will open the portfolio in its own tab in the browser so that you have room to look at your console. And again, just one more time, you get to the console by right-clicking anywhere on the page and hitting the inspect option at the bottom or towards the bottom, depending on what browser you're using. And then navigate to the console tab at the top of that. So I like to keep that open when I'm working on development. We don't need it right now, but I like to keep it open because if there are errors, they're going to show up in red there and you can sort of say, oh, wait a minute, something's gone wrong. So for now, let's see if our code worked by clicking on the header. You should see an alert box pop up that says, whatever your message was, I like tacos.
And I do.
Who doesn't like tacos? Does anyone not see that alert box on their screen? Click on the header where it says my portfolio header, because that's the element in the HTML that we told JavaScript to listen for a click on. Okay. Zelda, is that me as in you click it and you don't see the pop-up? Okay, So this is the tricky part by doing things remote. If we were in person, Alyssa and I could scramble around to your laptop and look and see what was going on. But that's okay. We're going to do our best to troubleshoot this remotely and see if we can't figure out what exactly is happening. So first thing you want to do is go back and look. Alyssa has her code up here. See if yours it looks like hers. Do you have the script tag in place? Do you have your header variable defined? Is it listening for main header in quotation marks?
Another thing that's frustrating about coding sometimes that I think we didn't mention yet, but like it's very specific. So if you have spelled something incorrectly, or if you have forgotten a character, a semicolon, a comma, an ending quotation marks, it's not going to work. So it has to match exactly with what I have here in order for it to work.
Yeah.
Dania, do you want me to copy and paste this into the?
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, it is definitely, there have been days, hours, days that I've spent trying to figure out why something doesn't work. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot the T in event listener.
Yep.
Okay. That's cool.
All the time. All the time.
I just wanted to jump in to you fabulous folks and let you know that there is some great conversation going on in the chat, and I'm very impressed to see how everyone is helping each other. This is fabulous.
Yay.
Yeah, this is great.
And while we're troubleshooting this, I will also say that when I wish that someone had told me some of these things when I first started out, but the community of developers, for the most part, there's always exceptions to the rule, are very helpful, very supportive. I sometimes still get frustrated with myself if I can't figure something out or get stuck. I ask people all the time, Zelda, if you should have a second tab in your browser open that has glitch open. If you did the show in new window, you should be able to just click back to that tab to get to your glitch code.
It works here too, though, or it should work.
Okay.
It's correct. It should work also in the.
Yeah, if you have it open in your window over there, right? So ask questions, even if you think that they might be dumb questions. They're not. It is really okay to just say, hey, there are times where I will walk a more senior developer through something I've been doing, and I will talk for 20 minutes straight trying to explain why I'm stuck and why I'm frustrated. And then they are the one to point out like, hey, you misspelled that. And I'm like, okay. Everyone's very nice. People generally want to help you learn. People want to help you succeed. And the Charlotte devs community is super helpful. And people at most workplaces are very helpful and want to help you grow. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you.
All right. So Zelda, did you get back to your correct tab or are you still stuck? But also, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, please let me know. I apologize. People mispronounce mine all the time and I fail to correct them. So
That is quite all right. It's Zeldy. It's a long E.
Zeldy. Okay. Yeah, Zeldy. Good.
Yeah, Zeldy. But
thank you.
I have typed. I'm trying to type that after that little funny bracket, the mouse touch bracket. I think that's where I went wrong because mine was I'm learning Java, but I say add event listener and then the normal brackets, and then click comma events, and then right there is where I think mine is going wrong right there.
Okay, so event, and then you want the equals sign
Do I space between event? This seems like a space, right?
Yes.
Yes, there's a space between event and then the equals and,
And
the
then the
greater than error.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then another space,
Yep. And then the mustache bracket.
the mustache bracket. Just one of them, right? Or do I?
When you create the opening one, it should automatically create a closing one for you.
Okay, so shift and then that one. Okay, yes, it
Mhm.
did.
And then enter to a new line.
Enter. Okay. Oh, yes. All right. And then alert.
And then a message in parentheses and
Okay.
quotation marks.
Oh, yes. That is where I went wrong. Okay. That is why it probably didn't come up. All right. Do I, let me see if I can delete this one. Sorry, everybody.
You
Fine.
don't have anything to apologize for. This is literally the point of this entire class.
Okay. So I'm learning Java. And then is this a, let me see, semicolon?
This is Seymour wants to help. He's very excited. He also likes tacos.
Yeah. I also saw in the chat, Anthea, did you get it working yet, or are you still having trouble?
And if anyone is stuck, you can copy your code from the JavaScript tag that we put in, from the script tag, and put it in the chat and we can take a look at it.
Okay, it looks like Anthea's having some troubles. Let's see. Oh. Okay, so I see what's wrong. You're missing this. So after the mustache closing bracket that you have there, after the alert, just put a closing parentheses and see if that helps. Yep, same thing with you, Zeldy. You'll want to put a closing parentheses after that last mustache bracket.
Yeah. JavaScript is finicky.
It really is. So let us know if that works, ladies.
And then just out of curiosity, Alyssa, would you delete your closing parentheses?
Right here?
Yeah. And then go over to the other window and see if there's a message in the console.
Oh, yeah.
So just, if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, it's not working. Why isn't my thing working? I did everything I was supposed to do. You open that console, and this is one of the times where JavaScript tells you exactly what's wrong. So if you're looking at this, it says uncaught syntax error. Well, what does that mean? Well, it just means that in the syntax of what you've written, in the wording that you have given JavaScript to run, there's something that isn't going to work because something's missing. Missing parentheses, usually it tells you the line that the parentheses is missing from in your code. So line 100, is that what that says?
That's what it says.
So you go to line 100, missing parentheses. Oh, okay, so that's exactly what's missing. So you know exactly what you have to add in. Sometimes your IDE tool that you're running will give you an error right in line. It'll give you a little hint that says, hey, don't you want to add a parentheses here? Because if you don't, it's not going to work. Sometimes they don't. It depends on which one you're using and what extensions you have enabled. But there are tools that do help give us pointers to what's going on. 20 errors. That means you're doing all kinds of good things.
Yeah.
I was working with a senior developer on my project this week, and I was telling him about all these errors I saw, and he was like, that sounds juicy. And I was like, I'm not looking for juicy. I'm looking for it to work. What is going wrong?
That's funny.
Okay, so
Is anyone still having trouble?
Yes, I got the message good, but I wasn't here last two time. I opened the console. I saw the whole bunch of red color in there. So what should I do? But I got my portfolio web page look good.
And you got this pop up here to work?
Yes, I got the JavaScript today, but I wasn't here the last two class. But inside my console, I have the whole bunch of red color.
Okay. What does it say? Can you read some of it?
Okay, I can read the first one. Uncatch in promise type error, cannot read property, verify of under file, and it give me the number HTML hint like line 37 and runtime JavaScript 63.
Huh. I would maybe just ignore that for now.
Yeah, I think because I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from the first and second class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
and
I would ignore,
it looks like,
go ahead, Dana.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, it looks like there's someone has also posted the same error
Right.
in the chat. That might be something with glitch.
Yeah, I think
because
that's an issue.
what we're running should not be giving those types of errors. That doesn't even make any sense. So okay.
Yeah, beside that, I got the good pop-up message from today.
Okay. Well, then we're going to consider that a success.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, you shouldn't, there are some websites you're going to look at. There are, just websites on the internet right now that if you look in the console, you're going to see errors, and it doesn't always mean that the page isn't going to run. Sometimes there are things that get left in the code that, yeah, exactly. You pull up Amazon, they have like 10 bajillion people that work there, and they know what they're doing, most of them. And stuff just happens. Files clash, things just don't work correctly every single minute of every single day. So there are errors that are going to show up sometimes, and things will still work. I'm not saying that you should, have code on the internet that has a bunch of errors in it. Fix what you can, but sometimes things are out of your control. And if glitch is having some JavaScript errors, but our stuff that we put in is still running, well, I'm going to consider that a victory for today's class. Yeah, so there's a second little step that we were going to possibly work on with this, but due to the fact that we're fairly short on time at this point, I would probably prefer to stop and have questions and answers now, unless there are zero questions or feedback, in which case we can keep going. But I would like questions. I like when people want to interact and chat about what we're doing, or not about what we're doing, just anything related to this at all.
I have a question.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Justin.
So I definitely want to watch your other videos for this page, like this CSS and all that. And I think Alyssa said that they will be available on YouTube at some point. Are there links that you can throw in the chat, or is it not available yet?
I'm working on putting those links in there for you right now, Justin.
Oh, thanks, La.
Yay, thank you.
Got it.
And we do have, for anyone who's enjoying this and wants to keep going, or wants to explore other things, maybe JavaScript isn't your thing, and that's totally okay. we do other classes with the library, and sometimes it's just things like talking about careers in the tech field. We will just have a round table where there will be 4, 5, 6 of us who talk about what we do and what different types of careers there are and how to get into them. And then there are some things that are much more, like cloud architecture based. So there's all kinds of different options that we like to provide. But what's really helpful to us is to know what you all want to learn. We are happy to learn along with you. If it's something we don't know, we're happy to outsource to other professionals if we need to. And we like to share the things that we're learning. It helps us learn them better, and it helps us engage with the community. And we want to provide content that everyone benefits from. And we're, like I said, so grateful to have the library as a resource and as a partner in this. So if there's anything you'd like to learn, let us know, or just hear about. You don't even have to want to learn. If you just want to sit down and, like I said, have a roundtable discussion about something. It doesn't have to be instructional every time. We're very open to lots of different things. We really do like to keep things relevant to what people want in their lives.
Do you know of any place that I can find like a diagram or like just a simplified visual of like the pieces that are required for a website? So I know you got the HTML shell and you got the JavaScript thrown in there, the CSS for style, but then you have to have the back end and they all have to connect, and then you have to publish it. So it's like, I would love to have just like not a cheat sheet necessarily, but kind of like maybe one time you guys do a show or something, and it's like, hey, this is a final product. This piece needs to do this. And you know what I mean? Show us the gears kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Instead
I don't know of
piece
something.
by piece by piece.
No, yeah. I don't know of something that exists like that off the top of my head, but that is a good idea for something we could do.
Yeah, if it doesn't exist, let's make it.
But what?
I said, if it doesn't exist, let's create it.
Yeah.
Yes, create it. I'm on board.
So
I'm always on board for you guys.
in that context, would it be helpful just to like, sorry, my puppy is whining very loudly in the background. Would it be helpful to present an end result, say, here's a website or an application or whatever, and then here are the different pieces that make it up with a brief overview of each, and then resources where you can like dig in further to each of those things? Or did you have something else in mind?
That's exactly it. I was thinking like a diagram, literally, here's a website, here's what you see, here's the languages I use, here's what the files look like for them, here's how they're connected, here's the back end, here's the database, here's how they connect, and here's how you publish it.
That's cool. Yeah.
Because that's what I'm learning. I'm learning back end right now, and I know a little bit of front end, and I'm starting to learn how to publish on like private servers, like hosting your own. But it's like, I want to know how to throw it out there for real. And that's the disconnect that I have right now.
No, that's really, really good point. It is something that I struggled with a lot too, because I started out doing freelance, and it's very different when you're doing stuff on your own and you've sort of got to piece the puzzle together, and you don't have all of those things like the hosting part of it. And there's so many options and so many resources, and it's tough to know where to look. I mean, if you look at code you can look at projects on GitHub and you can see the entire project. You can see what went into the HTML, the CSS. You can see what they used for the backend. You can see what languages they used to incorporate anything that they've done. But that only shows you the files. And oftentimes there is not a comprehensive like README that goes along with it that tells you, and here's what I did with them. So I do think that is a very good idea and would be a helpful tool. Yeah, I will make a note of that.
Yeah, because that would be a base for everyone. Even if you don't know anything, you're like, oh, these are the pieces that go in the engine, and then this is how the car works.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Good
Me
idea.
too. Okay. Anyone else?
I'm gonna kick out of here. You guys have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you. You
Justin.
too.
Great to have you.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if this is even an appropriate question, or even if it's I don't know. I don't even know if I should call it a question, but maybe just a little background of myself. I don't know if this is the place to say it or not. I don't know. Maybe you can. But I'm new to this. I just from Google search, I stumbled upon this meeting thing, and I'm just a girl trying to rediscover herself. I had a career break, and I have a degree in nuclear medicine, so this has nothing to do with this. But I can't do nuclear medicine anymore, so I'm looking for a new career. I got sick, and so it's a long story. So I'm trying to get into IT, just so that I can start a new career for myself. Being a single mom, and it's just hard. So, but I don't know where to start. So I was just doing research. Some people have talked about coding, and so I don't know with you. Maybe I'm asking for professional advice. Do you think that this JavaScript, do I need a computer science degree? Do I need to have an IT knowledge of some sort? Because I'm so lost, but I'm desperately screaming out for help, and I don't know. And I woke up this morning to come to this class, but I had no idea. But I just know I need to do something. I don't know. I'm just all over the place. So I don't know if you can help.
Yes, that's what we're here for, literally.
Yeah.
I think a good place. Well, first of all, you don't need a computer science degree by any means.
No.
I started out. In a completely different field as well. And then when I turned 36, I decided I wanted to change careers. So it can be done. You're definitely headed in the right direction. I think you've come to the right place. I think some of the videos that the library has on their site of past programs that we've done specifically for this one and some others will be helpful for you. But we'd love for you to join the Charlotte Devs group. We have, Stay with QC Bytes. We put programs on a lot. We are always here to reach out to personally if you want to email us or chat sometime over Zoom or get a coffee. That's what we're here for.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I appreciate that, Alyssa, but I'm trying to figure out who can be my mentor to help me start in the IT. All I know is I have a bachelor's degree, and I just know that these $10 jobs, you can't do it, and I'm like feeling stuck, and I just don't know what to do, and I'm just trying to start a new career. I'm 46, so I'm a bit late in the game, Alyssa.
No, you're not.
Never too late.
You're not.
It is never too late.
You're not.
Yeah.
Similarly to Alyssa, I have a degree in something completely unrelated. I decided to change careers, and it took me years to actually make the transition because I was terrified. I knew I wanted to do it. I didn't know where to start. I felt overwhelmed, and I kept procrastinating. And I can tell you it is 100% doable. I learned the skills I needed to learn outside of my job on my own. I would work, evenings and weekends on learning stuff. And you have to have the discipline to put in some work in order to be able to learn something. And once you have the skill set, you can go in and interview for jobs that are going to pay you more than $10 an hour. You absolutely can do it. And I know that you can reach out to either of us and we will gladly give you advice on where to start and how to figure out what you're interested in. There's a lot of stuff within IT. It doesn't have to be JavaScript. And like I said, the crying shirt, no joke. I get overwhelmed all the time and don't know what to do. And I get frustrated. And sometimes it gets the better of me and sometimes it doesn't. And there are tons of different things you can learn. One thing isn't going to be for you once another thing is. So if you work on something like JavaScript and you're like, I can't do this, this is not for me, I don't like it, that's okay. There's tons of other things that you can learn. But if it's just hard and challenging, I encourage you to keep working through it because it does get easier and you start to pick up on some things and you start to build a toolkit that you can use to navigate through the more complicated situations that are a little frustrating and overwhelming sometimes. We believe in you. You're gonna do this. You'll be fine.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Sure.
Please.
Hi, everyone. You guys are awesome. This is Naomi. I wanted to tell her I wasn't sure of her name, but I am in the same boat. I have 2 kids. I'm working, as a software developer as junior level. No one wants to teach me. However, we're on here on Meetup because you're determined to learn something. Do YouTube videos. You have to practice every day. The more you practice, the more you will learn, but don't beat yourself up. Give yourself enough time to get through this. And what you're doing is the first step. That's all I wanted to say.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's
That was
beautiful.
awesome.
Thank you. And
I've posted a link to the library's website for resources. They are literally listed A through Z. So there's a lot of things since lynda.com has become LinkedIn Learning. As long as you have a library card, and some of them you don't have to. You can create a free account via username and password. We have many, many resources for free that you can use to help you feel more confident in even coming to groups like this and getting on Meetup and things like that. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat for you all, just in case you want to talk to me too, okay?
yes, please, everyone do feel free to reach out to any of us. We do have our LinkedIn's and email addresses in the slides that we're sending out to. And there is a page of resources there's some good beginner guides in there. There's beginner tutorials. There's stuff you can just read. Different people learn different ways. There's YouTube channels that I've linked in there that you can just watch videos and code along. I find that personally useful. But if you need more resources in any of these directions, let us know. We're truly here to help and support in any way that we can.
Yeah, and I am going to be saving the chat transcript so that I can pull all of the questions and resources and everything out of there, and we can add those to the end of the slide deck too.
Awesome, thank you.
Alyssa, if you would add the bit.ly for me to the end of the slide deck I'd appreciate you guys doing a fabulous survey for all of us.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So we can, and especially as Alyssa and Dania said, please put in there anything that the library and Queen City Bytes can further your education on for free, because they do this for free and they take time out of their week all year long to help us with these programs just for you all. So please let us know specifically what you want so we can do this for you.
Yes, we want to provide stuff for you that you want and need. So give us feedback, give the library feedback. They're so generous with their time and their space. And it's a great partnership, but we want to make sure that it continues. And the best way that we can continue it is to offer relevant classes. So if it's not JavaScript and it's something else, you just let us know and we will find a way to make it happen.
I was going to say, when you were talking about the roundtable and the career stuff, so I work with the Job Help Center at Child Network Library. So I wonder if we could partner up for that. I may have to ask my boss.
That'd be great.
Please, we would love that.
That'd be terrific.
We're always looking for partners and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So anyone who wants to work with us, find us on these LinkedIn, these emails, on Slack, on our meetup page, whatever works for you.
And also, you know, when we finally do go back to in-person learning, we're always looking for TAs.
Yeah.
If that helps, if teaching helps you learn, then you can always volunteer with us.
Yep.
So yeah, keep that in mind too.
Even if you're not an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm learning every day. So you don't feel like there's some bar you need to meet to help us and to join in and help teach a class.
Sounds good. Yeah, I was going to say, yes, well, my background is in computer science. So I have a computer science degree. You know, I'm a librarian. So,
Awesome.
But I do have a little bit of like, I still have coding skills and knowledge in me. So I have no problem teaching a class if needed.
Awesome.
Okay. Noted.
Kurt is awesome. I mean, we are fortunate at the library to have him.
That's awesome.
Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be coding. It just be tech
Right.
related. So if you have something that you specialize in or that you're really interested in, that's always an option too.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been awesome. Please reach out. Let us know what we can do. I really, really enjoyed being able to share JavaScript with you. And I'm so grateful for Alyssa being my partner in crime, and for Law and Kurt and the library, and for all of you for making time for us. Thank you.